All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Danny Rosenmund, and I am here on behalf of Not One More Vet, or NOMV. I am the director of outreach for this organization. I've been with us for about 3.5 years at this point, and prior to this, I worked in nonprofit animal sheltering for 6 years. NOMV began in 2014 as a Facebook group in response to the unexpected and tragic death of Dr. Sophia Yin. Um, she was an influential veterinarian in the Bay Area where our founders were located, and her loss really inspired and encouraged open conversations about the status of mental health within the veterinary profession. We've grown from that over the past decade, and we have our mission to transform the status of mental wellness within the profession so that veterinary professionals can survive and thrive through education, resources, and support. And we hold the values of compassion, community, education, support, and equity. As an organization, we define our stakeholders as members of the veterinary health team, representing not just credentialed and degreed staff members, but also incorporating practice managers, support staff, veterinary assistants, anybody who works and contributes towards the health and well-being of the animals in the care of the clinic. We also include the community as part of the stakeholders as well. This is the individuals who may patronize or be clients at veterinary practices, regardless of whether they are small or large animal. We're including the agricultural community in this, as well as industry business partners, and also mental health providers. We really want to make sure that we are communicating with people who are also interested in the same goals that we are. We have a three-pronged approach to promoting well-being that includes peer support, awareness, education, and outreach, as well as resources and direct support. Before I hand it over to our speaker today, we are having our annual Race Around the World fundraiser next month in May. Signups are already open. So please, if you are interested in getting active and supporting a great cause, check out nomv.org/racearoundtheworld. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, veterinarian, integrative health and life coach, consultant, speaker, and advocate for positive change in vet med, Dr. Amelia Knight Pinkston.
Hello, and thank you, Danny. Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to put up my slides here. All right. So today's talk is called From Hopeless to Hopeful, because that is a journey that I personally went on as a vet who experienced and recovered from burnout. And so over this next hour, my hope is to share a fresh perspective with you that's going to help you to feel hopeful about your path forward in vet med and also about what's possible for our profession. And before we really dive in, I'm just going to share my role in this conversation. So I have lived burnout, so I get it if you're feeling that way. I also have about a decade of experience working in small animal general practice, urgent care, and relief. And so I've been able to see a lot of examples of what works and what doesn't. For the past 5 years, I've also been coaching, and during that time, I've done a number of certifications and trainings to really explore how the mind and body work from different lenses, and to really look into what gets in the way of sustainable health and success that feels good. And so as a coach, I'm not here to diagnose or treat or to replace therapy. And that's something that I really love. Instead, I'm here to offer a mind-body approach to help you to ask, why is it really understandable that I feel the way that I do? And what would help to feel better? And my hope is that that will feel like a breath of fresh air, a lot like this view and the breeze that I felt from a recent trip in Switzerland. And so if you are feeling drained or stressed or burned out, you have come to the right place. And I want you to know that this isn't the end. You don't have to stay stuck here. This really is the beginning of getting to shift into a new gear. And so imagine that it's like you have been pedaling on a bike as fast as you can and realizing that you can shift into a higher gear so that you can be going the same, if not the same speed, if not faster, but with a lot less effort so that you actually get to enjoy the journey. That's what I'm going to offer to you today. And so, a good place to start, honestly, is my name, Amelia, because it summarizes an important life lesson that I had to learn the hard way. So, my name literally means industrious or hardworking. And for a long time, that's how I thought it had to be. Like, you work hard, you follow all the rules, and success follows. But what I realized is that there really are two ways of working hard. You can work hard in a way that looks good on paper. It leads to moments where you receive praise or achievements or feel proud. But a lot of the time, it feels draining and it creates this carrot on the stick situation where you're always feeling like you have to do more in order to feel like enough. Alternatively, you can work hard in a way that feels good and fulfilling. It gives you more energy than it drains so that you can actually enjoy where you are now in the journey. And when I experienced burnout, I felt stuck. I had so much regret in the path that I had taken, but it actually wasn't the end for me. It was this beautiful turning point of getting to go down a path that was different than what I imagined, but incredibly fulfilling. And so that's what I want to offer to you. Now I get to wear many different hats, getting to help to create positive change in a profession that I thought I wanted to escape from. And so just know that there really are endless possibilities and ways of making vet med work for you. And you also don't have to just be one thing. So the game plan today is we're going to do a quick exercise just to reconnect you with what got you into vet med. I'm going to share a little bit more of my story. We'll talk about why it makes sense if you're feeling burned out or stressed or drained. I'm going to share a concept that really simplifies burnout and then some powerful tools that you can start using now that will help you to start feeling better so that hopefully you'll leave here feeling lighter, hopeful, and clear on your next step. So let's start out with, if you're comfortable, just closing your eyes for a moment and just thinking back to when you decided, yes, I want to go into vet med. And just really tuning into, how did you think it was going to make you feel? What was your energy like? What thoughts were you having about yourself and the work that you're doing? And you can let me know in the chat if you want. The reason why I ask that is because it's really important to connect with that feeling. Because at the root of any goal is a desire to feel a certain way. And you did a lot of hard things in order to try to achieve that feeling, right? To get here. But if right now you're feeling burned out or stressed or drained, that just means that something along the lines has disconnected you from that feeling. And we're going to talk about how you can start reconnecting with that, even if it looks a little different from what you originally imagined. And so I'd love to check in just to know, how are you feeling right now? Which of these feels most familiar? You can let me know in the chat if you want. So there's, I'll do it tomorrow. That is where life is just feeling like a lot. You are just trying to get through the day, maybe feel like you have no energy or motivation. You may not feel great about the way that you're taking care of yourself, but it's just like you are just trying to get through the day. So you'll say, I'll deal with that tomorrow. Or there's the pressure cooker. That's where you feel proud of where you are, but it feels like a lot. You feel like you're always busy juggling everything. And if you slow down, it feels like things are just going to fall apart. And you might feel good about the way that you're taking care of yourself, but it also might require like a lot of energy or discipline or willpower. And then there's also life boost. And this is where life feels fulfilling and sustainable. You're enjoying your work, you are taking care of yourself in a way that feels good, and you're able to bounce back quickly after hard days or challenges. And so, if I'll do it tomorrow or the pressure cooker are sounding more familiar, that's the case with most people. And we're going to talk about why that is and how to be feeling more of that life boost. So burnout was not part of the plan for me. Probably like a lot of you, I knew really early on that I wanted to be a vet, like definitely by the time that I was 6. And I knew that our profession struggled with burnout. And so I went into it thinking I was going to be really proactive to prevent it. And so after I graduated from undergrad, I actually took a year off before applying to vet school because I had had that dream for so long. I just really wanted to make sure, is this the time and financial investment that I want to make? And I decided, yes, this is definitely what I want to do. So I went to UPenn's veterinary school. I graduated in 2014. And I prioritized healthy habits. I was really into self-help books and positive mindset, stress management. I even changed jobs when it wasn't a good fit, and I had tough conversations when something wasn't working to try to problem solve. And yet, I still reached burnout. And honestly, I was in denial for a long time before realizing that I was burned out because it's not a very convenient realization to realize that like my childhood dream was feeling more like this hamster wheel or nightmare. And so much of my identity was tied to being a vet. It also happened really gradually. There was a part of me that was proud to be a vet, that loved being a vet. But the reality was that I did start getting home at the end of the day, just feeling irritable and numb. Like I'd be looking forward to being home with my husband and dog all day, and then I wouldn't actually enjoy that time or that connection. I just felt like I was really going through the motions. I'd wake up just wishing that the day was already over. And I realized I was really wishing, like fantasizing about retirement. I was imagining that that's when I would actually get to start enjoying my life. And yet it actually was more my body that really gave me the wake up call. And that took a long time too. I had been having frequent random abdominal pain really since college. And I had done workups and doctors told me I was healthy. And so that had just kind of become my norm. But I also needed multiple cups of coffee to get through the day, even though I had healthy habits. And I was experiencing brain fog every afternoon. And I remember when it dawned on me, like, maybe not everybody feels super spacey and like they're in slow-mo every day. And so I finally went to see a functional medicine practitioner, and I was just sitting across the desk from her, and she asked me such a simple question. She just asked, "Are you happy being a vet?" And instead of my typical rehearsed answer, like, yeah, it's a little stressful, but I love it, I had this huge wave of emotions just bubble up that I didn't even know were there. And I had to hold back tears. And that's when I was really realizing, okay, this isn't working for me. Something has to change. But I did feel really stuck. I felt like there were so many reasons why things couldn't be different until I embraced the 3 Life Boost C's. And we're going to talk more about this at the end, but the 3 C's were compassion. I realized I was kind of punishing myself for feeling like I had made the wrong decision. And I started to have compassion. Like I did not want to be wishing decades of my life away. Curiosity. I started to get curious about what went wrong when I tried so hard to follow all the rules and do everything right. And then connection. I started to get to reconnect with what my body and heart had been telling me for a long time, my values, and that helped me to start connecting the puzzle pieces of what had gone wrong. And so, what I've realized is that burnout feels hard to tackle because there are so many contributing factors, and it really is individual for everyone. And so, imagine that you have this tub that is overflowing. You don't want to ruin the floor. And so, you're just like trying to scoop out water. That's not super efficient, right? That's kind of like our current approach. But what if instead we focus on controlling the faucet? That would be much more efficient and effective. And that's the kind of approach that I want to share with you. So, what I've realized is that we really can simplify burnout by looking at one thing that we all share, and that's a nervous system. Because burnout really is a nervous system experience. The problem is that we aren't really given a user manual, and in many ways, we are given the opposite. Because of hustle and diet culture, we're really taught to ignore our body. And when we're ignoring our nervous system, it can become the biggest thing that is getting in our way. But it also can be your guiding light to finding the path that really lights you up when you start to tune into what it's telling you. And so that's what we're going to dive into, how to start listening to and partnering with your nervous system. So we all learn about the stress response, right? And how that at least applies to animals, maybe not so much to us. So when the nervous system perceives a threat, we go into fight, flight, or freeze until we can get back to safety. The stress response is a beautiful design. It is good and it's necessary, right? Like we're going to encounter stressors in vet med, but also as high achievers with big goals, we need to go outside of our comfort zone, right? It's important for growth, but it's supposed to be temporary. The stress response is for survival, not thriving. Most of the time, we want to be spending in that safe parasympathetic state. This is where our body can function optimally. It doesn't have to just be focused on getting us ready for fight or flight. And so that's where we can be digesting and our hormones, blood sugar, immune system, skin, all those things are acting the way that they're supposed to. This is also the state where we can heal and grow and recharge and connect with others in a way that feels good. And it's where we feel relaxed, engaged, curious, creative, hopeful, playful. Maybe all of those feelings that you had imagined you would feel in vet med. So this is crucial for thriving in vet med and life. And this should be the normal baseline. That's not always what happens. So your body's one mission is to take care of you and to keep you safe. And it takes that job very seriously. Sometimes that gets in the way. So I'm going to really simplify this for this talk, but when your body encounters more stress than it can process in the moment, it acts as a trauma. And basically, it doesn't want to forget that. And so the nervous system can start to act like a helicopter parent where it is overly cautious and it starts treating everything like a threat. And when that happens, it can start to latch on to one of those stress responses so that it starts to become your default pattern. And that's when survival mode starts to become your norm. And so you can shift into one of these 4Fs and are known as trauma responses, but I think of it as just operating in survival mode. And they can be fight, flight, fawn, or freeze and shut down. And freeze and shut down, they're actually different. There's some nuances, but for the sake of this, we're going to clump those together. And so let's go over what it looks like when you are spending a lot of time in one of these. And I'm going to start with freezer shutdown. That's basically the nervous system's plan B. It's like if you were in fight or flight and you weren't able to get to safety, then you go into freezer shutdown. It's basically like the nervous system is saying, this is too much. We're just trying to protect you from pain. So this shutdown, from my perspective, really is burnout. It is the body's way of saying everything is feeling like too much. And so you may be feeling no energy or no motivation. You may feel numb, hopeless, or depressed. Don't want to be around others. Maybe having brain fog, feel forgetful, struggle to make decisions, maybe procrastinating or avoiding. And so an example of that could be that you are staying up late, just kind of mindlessly scrolling on your phone because you just don't have the energy to get ready for bed, and you're also dreading the next day. I want to highlight about this is that this is a really valuable message from your body, right? Your body was designed to do that. This nervous system state isn't a problem. The real problem is the way that we typically react to it. We tend to judge those thoughts and think that we are lazy or we just need to do better. Lazy really just means that something in your life, physically, emotionally, or mentally, is feeling like too much. And we tend to react just by thinking that we need to push through or try harder. And that reaction just ends up adding more stress to a nervous system that is already saying this is feeling like too much. And that makes it really hard to understand why you're feeling that way and to connect with what you need to shift out of that. And so let's explore what happens before that point, because that is kind of the plan B, right? And so what does it look like if we've been operating in fight or flight? This is where we get into trouble with vet med. So flight is basically like the gas pedal is on and there is no brake pedal. This is because slowing down or imperfection are now threatening to your nervous system. And so you may be constantly busy, like slowing down feels uncomfortable. You may feel guilty or lazy or restless. You hold yourself to impossibly high standards. You may be a workaholic. You probably have a very busy mind that is always worrying or thinking about worst case scenarios or contributing to anxiety. You may be an adrenaline junkie or love caffeine and that energy boost. And so if you're spending a lot of time in flight mode, then you may finally have a day off. You may know that you need to rest. But in order for rest to feel comfortable, you are like, okay, I need to deep clean the house and run all these errands and do all these things on my to-do list so that it's at the end of the day and you still haven't actually been able to recharge. And it's important to be aware of this because a lot of the well-being messages say just take time off or do yoga, journal and meditate. And you may not think that those are for you if you're in flight mode because you hear that it's supposed to be comfortable, but for you, it's not going to. And so you're going to think that you aren't doing it right or it's not for you. It's really just that your nervous system needs to learn that those are okay. And then fawn. So it's basically people pleasing. This is where your nervous system has learned that not being liked is a threat. And so you may be the one that everybody relies on, even though that makes you feel kind of resentful. You may do and say things so that others will like you, but so that people don't actually really get to know the real you. You may over apologize or feel responsible for other people's emotions. So you may be the type to be like, are you mad at me to your partner, even if there's no reason that they would be? You may avoid difficult conversations or rely on external validation. Like your inner critic is probably brutal. And so in order to feel worthy, you're relying on praise from others or achievements or like the number on the scale. So as an example of this could be that you say yes to more walk-ins even though you're already overwhelmed. It means you're working through lunch because you feel bad saying no, even though it makes it so that you can't practice medicine in a way that feels good. And so in this mode, it's important to know that saying no is going to feel like you're doing something wrong, but it doesn't mean that you are doing something wrong. It just means your nervous system needs a software update. And then there's fight. So this is like everything is irritating mode. Other things are the threat, or it may be directed to yourself. So you may be easily frustrated by mistakes, either by others or your own. You may feel like you have a really short fuse, feel defensive and argumentative if we think about these days and online bullies, and your inner critic may be brutal. So an example of that could be that you snap at your partner and then later regret it and realize that you overreacted. One thing I want to highlight is that we can be quick to label clients or coworkers who are in this fight stress response as toxic, right? But they really are humans in the fight stress response. And so what if we use that as a warning sign that that person needs support, and also yourself if you're finding that, everyone around you is irritating you. So I'd love to pause here and just see, like, let me know in the chat if you're comfortable. Like, do any of these 4 Fs sound familiar? When I first heard about the flight and fawn responses, I was like, wow, that pretty much feels like that summarizes who I am. And what I really want to highlight is notice how, in many ways, VetMed selects and rewards us for signs of flight and fawn, that high achieving, always busy, self sacrificing. Yeah, I didn't realize, right? We often don't realize that we're burned out until then we hear a description. So, what I really want to highlight is if we normalize and attribute our success to traits that we were already in survival mode at flight and fawn, then it makes it impossible to address the root issues. And it means that if we're functioning in fight and fawn, then eventually it makes so much sense that we would end out in burnout. We can't stay there, even if it leads to moments of, moments of success. It's not sustainable. And absolutely, yeah. Can you be fawn and freezer shutdown? Yes, probably to some degree, all of these sound familiar, right? And you may feel like you're really stuck in one, or you may notice that you go in and out of these. Like even now, these are designs to and really valuable messages from our body. And so when I am in freeze, that still happens, right? Like I love the work that I'm doing, but some days I'll suddenly have a day where I just feel like I have no energy, no motivation, feeling kind of down. And now I'm able to look back and think, why is it understandable that I'm feeling this way? And there's always a really good reason. It's just my body being like, hey, we have been doing a lot and we really need to rest now. And the other thing I really want to highlight is that physical and mental health are not separate. And yet we talk a lot about mental health in vet med, but by just calling it mental health, it does make it seem like it's separate from physical health. And that's not the case from our body's perspective. Like if we are skipping basic necessities like water, nourishing food, rest, sunlight, then that is going to already be sending signals to our body that we're unsafe. And so again, the stress and trauma, it's from our body's perspective. And trauma isn't the event, it's the experience. And it can happen anytime you feel too much, too soon, too fast, too painful, or too little for too long. And so often we're not even consciously aware of it. And so to give you a couple of examples of what that could look like, for me, an example of too much stress was In my first anatomy exam in vet school, I failed. And up until that point, I was used to working hard, but getting great grades. And I was working harder than I ever had in my life, and I failed. And that was way too much stress to deal with. I felt so alone. I didn't know what to do. And so my nervous system really learned, like, well, you need to work even harder. There is no way you can rest and take time for you. An example of too little is that I had really loving, supportive parents growing up. Um, and they didn't necessarily pressure me to get good grades, but they weren't surprised when I did. And so it made me think, oh my gosh, if I don't get a perfect grade, I'm going to disappoint them. And as kids, it's really important that our caregivers love us for survival. And so what I had too little of was them telling me, it's okay if you fail, we will still love you. Making mistakes is part of growing. And it wasn't that they did anything wrong. They couldn't read my mind, knowing that that's what I needed to hear. But that's what I didn't get enough of. Luckily, as adults, we can reparent ourselves. So, why is this nervous system perspective so important? Because it really will change the way that you experience life. Because in survival mode, your amygdala, that survival part of your brain, is running the show. And it influences the way that you see the world. It is going to make everything seem more overwhelming and threatening. And it's also going to give you this negative brain filter where everything seems more negative and you're not seeing the positives. The other problem is that your default actions when you are stressed are going to be the opposite of what would actually help you to feel better. And that's exhausting. And so some examples of that would be if you are in flight, then you are going to know that you need rest, but you're going to think in order to do that or in order to feel better, you just need to do all the things on your to-do list perfectly. When in reality, what you need to do is be able to notice that you are in flight mode, that you need rest, and to be able to signal to your nervous system that you're safe, even if you haven't done everything on your to-do list. Another example is that when I am in the fight stress response, when I'm just feeling irritable, I've realized that the best thing that I need is a hug. And that is definitely not what I think that I need in the moment. I'm probably irritated with my husband, but it has been a game changer knowing that about myself and now being able to see, oh, I'm in the fight response right now. And I can say to my husband, you know what? I think I just need a hug. And so often that can change everything. And so it's this shifting out of survival mode is how you can start shifting into that new gear. And that's really important in order to get clear on the path that is going to light you up instead of burning you out. All right, you need to get your prefrontal cortex online in order to be making sure that your path aligns with your values instead of just letting your amygdala be in survival mode. Because we want to be able to figure out, like, do you really not enjoy working with people, or are you in fight or shutdown? Do you really not want to do surgeries, or are you stuck in flight and your inner critic is thinking about worst case scenarios and causing anxiety, and that's taking away the enjoyment? Do you need to change jobs, or are you in fawn and you just haven't had a conversation about how you're feeling to let your employer have the opportunity to make a change that would make all the difference? All of those are okay. Like, there are options in vet med if that is true, but we just want to make sure that your path forward isn't aligned with your values. And so in order to start doing that, to start shifting out of survival mode, you need to start reconnecting with your body and learning how to signal to your nervous system that you are safe. Because as you may have realized, just trying to tell yourself I shouldn't be stressed about this is not an effective way of feeling less stressed. So I've been talking a lot, and so now you get to move around a little bit with me. I'm going to share some anti-anxiety tools. And so you can think of something that may be causing a little bit of stress right now and just rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And this first one is bilateral stimulation. So you're just going to hold on to something. I have this little elephant, but it can be a pen, bone, anything. And you're just going to start passing it back and forth across midline. So this seems so simple, right? But the reason why this works to decrease that stress or anxiety is because you're activating both brain hemispheres. And by doing this, you're helping to basically just dilute out the activity from that amygdala and activating other parts of your brain. And I'm visual, so the way I like to think of it is like I'm driving and there is a bug, like an anxiety bug that just gets stuck on my windshield. And these are like windshield wipers, and it's just like a way of just like getting rid of that anxiety bug so that it's not in my way. So let me know if you liked that one. The next one is called Faster EFT. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it involves tapping on certain acupressure points while saying a statement. And I learned this from my teacher, Melissa Tier. She's a New Yorker, so this is just a faster, effective version. So you can do it with me. You're just going to start with tapping on the top of your head and saying something like, I release and let this go. And I can't see you guys, but I really encourage you to do it with me because then you can really feel it. Tapping right in between your eyebrows. Just, I release and let this go. Then right outside your eye where you feel the bone, I release and let this go. Tapping right under your eye where you feel the bone, I release and let this go. And tapping right on your collarbone. If it's been one of those days, you can be like, I release and let this shit go. And then just hold on to your wrist and take a breath in. And then slowly exhale twice the amount of time. That stimulates your vagus nerve. And that QR code brings you to a quick video tutorial if you want to remember those steps. So this can be a really powerful one to use throughout the day to signal to your body that you are safe. Like, for example, the moment you get up, instead of just being in go mode. It can be great when you are in the bathroom. It can be great during lunch break. At the end of the day, when you get into your car to go home, just to release and let go of any negative stress or energy that you don't want to take with you home, just to signal to your body it's time to shift into home mode. And even before going to bed. And then it can really be as simple as rubbing your fingertips together. So when you do this and you focus on the pressure that you need in order to feel the ridges on your fingertips, this activates a part of your brain called the task positive network. It helps you to be more positive and focused. And my guess is that you have an inner critic or some unhelpful thoughts that tend to contribute to feelings of anxiety or overwhelm. Or maybe your brain is playing these movies of worst case scenarios. Those thoughts come from a different part of your brain called the default mode network. And so when you do something as simple as rubbing your fingertips together, tuning into a sense, That's activating a different part of your brain. And those two parts, they act like a seesaw. So when you activate the task positive network, it decreases the activity, basically turns down the volume of those unhelpful thoughts. This can also work like every time you wash your hands, just really tuning into the way that the temperature of the water feels on your hands. And that's why I also really like this NOMV resource, the Seek Calm. Taking deep breaths, so taking a breath in and slowly exhaling is a great way to stimulate your vagus nerve. But then these 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, these are all tuning into senses. It's helping to signal safety. It's helping you to bring you to the present moment and helping to quiet those unhelpful thoughts. And so let me know if you really liked one of those. And certainly these are things to play around with. I have another free resource that's RACE approved where I share more anti-anxiety tools. But these are powerful for a number of reasons. It's powerful because they help you to shift out of an overwhelmed state so that instead of your amygdala running the show, you can think clearly. You can have your prefrontal cortex online. And that's important. If you think about even if you're in the middle of the surgery, you could be doing something like bilateral stimulation so that your mind doesn't go blank or in the middle of an exam. It's also helpful because it's such a roller coaster of emotions, right? A normal day in vet med. And in an effort to be professional, we tend to compartmentalize. But no one ever really talks to us about what to do with those bottled up emotions. And so if you're using these super simple tricks throughout the day, it's a way to be releasing some of that stress and signaling to your nervous system to help it return back to that parasympathetic state. And this isn't about not feeling uncomfortable emotions, right? Because all emotions are valuable. But these can be powerful because when you realize that there are ways that you can shift out of an overwhelmed state, it can make it feel less scary to be feeling them to the level that feels comfortable to you. And interestingly, the biochemical reaction of an emotion only lasts for up to 90 seconds. It's only when we are resisting feeling that or we have thoughts that continue to feed into that emotion that it seems like it lasts longer. And so these can help to just like ride that 90-second wave so you can leave it behind. The reason that these are really powerful, though, is because they really act as a pattern interrupt. And so being in survival mode really is just a habit that your brain has picked up on. And your brain is very capable of rewiring and learning new habits when you know the right steps. And so if you think of a habit as like a highway in your brain because you are really used to going down that road, anytime you notice you're going down that road and you use an anti-anxiety tool, that acts like a stop sign on that highway so that you can detour. You're shifting out of that emotionally charged state. You can have your prefrontal cortex and think about what you want to do instead. And that is going to make it so that that new path starts to become your new highway. So this is why I feel like we really need to adopt a fear-free approach in humans in vet med. Right? We're getting there with the animals, but we really need to be recognizing signs of a stress response in ourselves and others. And so this fear-free approach, even simply by recognizing and labeling, that already helps you to start shifting out of that state. Because in order to say, I'm in fight mode, you need to observe it. And that helps to create a little bit of distance. And so you recognize it and then pause and then think about what needs to happen to reestablish safety. And we'll talk about these 3 life boosties that can really help. Or do you need to create a boundary with that thing? So just imagine the impact when this becomes the norm in vet med. if instead of normalizing flight and fawn or reacting to fight mode, if we notice those as warning signs that if something doesn't change, we could go into that shutdown. And so these 3 life boost C's are going to help you anytime you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed to problem solve and move forward. They're compassion, curiosity, and connection. So compassion. Everything feels less scary and more doable when you know that you will be kind to yourself no matter what. And so start with signaling to your nervous system that you are safe, playing around with these anti-anxiety tools, but also making sure that your body has the basic necessities that it needs in order to do its job. Like, have you had nourishing food, water, right? Otherwise, it's so easy to be going into fight mode, hangry, because your body is like, I don't have the fuel I need. And then really notice the way that you've been talking to yourself. Your thoughts about yourself really influence the way that you see yourself and your reality. And so thinking back to the start of this, when you were thinking about what you initially envisioned vet med would feel like what thoughts did you need to have about yourself? Thinking, how do you want to feel and what thoughts do you need to have to support that? Because your brain filter, your reticular activating system, looks for proof of your beliefs. And this is a great way to start seeing the reality that you want. And practice treating your body with compassion by listening to signals like hunger, thirst, needing to rest, even needing to go to the bathroom. Because if you are spending some time in freeze or shutdown, it may be really hard to even articulate how you're feeling or to be able to feel that. And just practicing doing something as simple as like noticing when you have to go to the bathroom and honoring that can be a way to start reconnecting with your body. And then curiosity. Ditching judgment and embracing curiosity is a game changer. So one thing I really encourage you to do is, now that you know what these signs can look like, at the end of the day, if you notice that you are like in fight mode or freeze or shut down, pause and look back at your day and look at what were the specific things in your day that felt hard or contributed to stress or overwhelm. And I really recommend start like writing out a list, right? Like, and maybe it was that you hit snooze or you felt rushed. Maybe there are things outside of work that are stressful. Maybe it was a difficult client. Maybe it was looking at your schedule, feeling you weren't set up for success. Maybe there was a specific client. Start really embracing your inner researcher and collecting data. Because then you can start looking at each individual one and thinking, what needs to happen for this to feel less overwhelming, more safe? So for example, a difficult client can absolutely ruin your day, right? And feel so draining. And that's when you're having an amygdala to amygdala conversation, right? Like they are in fight mode, they're being difficult, and then your nervous system perceives that threat. And so you go into fight mode, and that's not enjoyable for anybody. But if you're having that fear-free approach and you're noticing this is a human who is in the fight stress response, and instead you could get curious about, why is it understandable that they're feeling overwhelmed, and what could happen to help them to feel seen or supported or to make my positive intention clear? That can actually start making those interactions feel really rewarding and to help to build trust. And also start collecting data on what are the moments when you do feel energy or enjoyment, even just a little bit of that. And how can you be creating more of a balance so that there are more things that are supporting your body and helping you to feel safe than things that are draining? Another really good question to ask is, what can you give yourself a permission slip for or take off your plate? Because our brains are very good at solving problems by adding, even when the much simpler, better solution is to take something away. And so it can be really valuable to ask yourself, how am I making my life harder than it has to be? And finally, so often we can feel overwhelmed or stressed if we made a mistake or if something didn't go the way that we expected. But just getting curious, what did you learn from that you can bring with you in the future? Because that is a necessary part of growth, right? You don't have to dwell on what went wrong. How can you use that information to move forward? And then connection. Everything is connected. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed, thinking, am I just getting caught up in my head and all these thoughts about what I should be doing? And are you ignoring what your body and heart are telling you that you need? And also zooming out. So in survival mode, it's so easy to get hyper focused on one thing. But if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it can be easier to see ways around that challenge. And I have a really simple but powerful exercise on my website and blog. It's called the Circle of Life. I've added my own flair. But that is a way of really stepping back and looking at all aspects of your life and looking for opportunities to start supporting yourself and getting back more energy. That QR code will link to it. I'll have another QR code at the end. And then connecting with others for support. There's so much power in connecting with somebody else whose nervous system is in a parasympathetic state. That will help to signal to your nervous system to be safe. So whether that is talking to a friend, a colleague, family member, NOMV has so many amazing resources. I'm always happy to connect and talk. That can be so powerful, just giving yourself permission to ask for support. So hopefully you are seeing burnout is not the end. It really is an opportunity to shift out of survival mode and into a new gear. And when you start tuning into what you need to shift out of survival mode, the magical thing that happens is that people are going to notice a shift in your energy, and they're going to want to know what you are doing. And I call that being a unicorn. Those unicorns, they're the people who just have this magnetic energy and this resilience, right? And so you don't have to wait for your workplace or a profession to change to feel better. You can start making these changes today. And by doing that, it is going to cause such a positive ripple effect in all aspects of your life, not just your career. And it's also going to help to spread a positive ripple effect around you. And I love a good acronym. So I have these 7 traits of a unicorn. And so we've touched on these today, but if you want to dive deeper, I have a podcast episode on it, Life Boost with Amelia. And also this morning, I just learned that it's International Unicorn Day. So if you are here, just take that as a sign. It's time to shift into unicorn mode. So finally, all of this is great, but what really matters is what you are going to do with this information. So let me know, what's one thing that you want to take away from this and start putting into practice, whether that's recognizing signs of the stress response, using anti-anxiety tools, maybe one of those life boosties or one of those questions really stood out to you. I'd love to know in the chat. And then I'd love to connect with you. So these are ways that we can get in touch. In that QR code, I have resources and references. And I do have another resource that has counts for 4 hours of race-approved CE, Beat the Burnout. And then I'll pass it back to Danny.
Thank you so much, Amelia. That was a really great presentation. I think I really learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did as well. NOMV was really happy to be able to put this on and make it free and available for the community so that they can sort of satiate their curiosity for the topic. And as you mentioned, we have a lot of resources that can help with this as well, whether you're interested in expanding your compassion, curiosity, or connection to others in the industry, NOMV does have resources available to help with that. Our specific ask for today, that blue QR code is a new feedback form that we're trying to leverage in our educational opportunities. We'd really encourage you to scan that and let us know a little bit about your experience in today's presentation. That is all that I had, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.